I gotta go again.
It's 6:30. So everybody stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Dreyer, if you would call the roll.
Mayor Carmen.
Here.
Mr. Terry.
Here.
Mr. Udaley.
Here.
Ms. Ferguson.
Here.
Mr. Reed.
Here.
Mr. Rucker. Mr. Sens.
Here.
Is there a motion to approve tonight's council meeting agenda for November 14th?
I will motion to approve tonight's council meeting agenda.
Second.
Mr. Terry.
Yes.
Mr. Udaley.
Yes.
Ms. Ferguson.
Yes.
Mr. Reed.
Yes.
Mr. Sens.
Yes.
And is there a motion to approve the council work session minutes from the November 2nd work session?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Terry.
Yes.
Mr. Udaley.
Yes.
Ms. Ferguson.
Yes.
Mr. Reed.
Yes.
Mr. Sens.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. I have a couple items underneath our proclamations for the meeting this evening. The first one, we held the Veterans Day ceremony at Daily Needs, the old elementary school on Friday at 1 o'clock. It was well attended and a very wonderful ceremony. I want to thank Mr. Charlie Center, Lieutenant Charlie Center, for his work in helping work with Ms. Linda Granger and Mr. Denton Kitts, our Parks and Rec department, for really helping to make sure that we still have a community Veterans Day ceremony. And I've asked Mr. Bernie Vance to and his family to come here this evening because we had one proclamation that we didn't present to him right there, but wanted to give special council recognition. So I'll come over, here to you. Whereas Mr. Bernard Vance is a member of the VFW Darby Post 3268 and American Legion Post 248, where he has served as commanders of both organizations. And whereas Mr. Vance continuously plays a critical role in keeping the historical record and accounts of the village of Plain City alive and flourishing through his leadership of the Plain City Historical Society. And whereas Mr. Vance's honorable service in the Army led to a successful career in the Columbus Police Department for 27 years. And whereas Mr. Vance worked for the state of Ohio as a special investigator for 15 years, culminating in his retirement in 2002. And whereas Mr. Vance has positively impacted multitudes of people in Plain City with his generous and kind actions, continually serving wherever he is needed, and whereas Plain City is a better community due to the exemplary civic engagement Mr. Vance has displayed. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Jody Carney, Mayor of Plain City, do hereby proclaim that Friday, the 11th of November, 2022 is a celebration of Mr. Bernard Vance, in witness whereof I hereunto set my hand and cause the seal of Village of Plain City to be here affixed. We'd like to present this proclamation to you here at a council meeting for all of your service and dedication to Plain City. And give done to present the Veterans Day ceremony to the elementary students as well as to the village. So we appreciate your efforts and your service. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All of you. Way to go, Bernie.
The other proclamation I have this evening, and I'm not sure if we have any representatives, but we had a request that was brought to the village for the Three Bridges Gospel Group. They have dutifully played for over 50 years at specifically also the Der Dutchman restaurant. And so I will go ahead and read that, and then we will be presenting it to them at a later time. Whereas the Three Bridges Gospel Group, comprised of founder Elliot McCoy, Shannon Smith, and Jeremy Hudson, have been prominently involved in the gospel music industry for over 50 years. And whereas Three Bridges has performed in front of a sold-out crowd at the well-known establishment of Der Dutchman each year for the past 30 years, and whereas Three Bridges has ministered to millions of people through their unique blend of gospel and soul music while on tour and through popular recordings, and whereas Three Bridges has performed their last live concert in Ohio before retirement, and whereas the Three Bridges deserves recognition for their contribution to Plain City and the gospel music industry and the positive community-centric impact that they have made over the past 30 years. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Jody Carney, Mayor of Plain City, do hereby proclaim that today, the 14th of November, 2022, is a celebration of the Three Bridges. So wanted to present that to everyone and thank them for their time here in our community. Now we have one visitor that has signed in for our visitor section. So Mr. Patrick Schenk, if you'd like to take the podium.
Hello all. So I'm here tonight to address my concerns about the rapid growth of Plain City. So my first concern is that historically Plain City has been a farming community, and it seems that we've been losing that aspect of our small town over the last few years. Now my second concern is it seems that we've stopped caring for and helping our local farmers, and that doesn't feel good because the reason that we all here ate today is because of a farmer. And the more land we take over time, the more will add up, and eventually we may have to deal with food shortages. And with all the new houses going up, we're losing very fertile and rich and valuable farmland. And here in Plain City, we have a lot of it. And this will contribute to the loss of farmland in the United States. We lose about 9.5 acres every minute, about 6,000 acres every day. Now, this is between forest land, pasture land, and farmland. But for food-producing land, we lose about 145 acres every hour. This is an increasing issue. Since 1980, we have lost 30 million acres of farmland and food-producing land. And that's really concerning, considering that most of the United States has its food provided by people here in the United States. We may not be able to stop it from happening in other parts of the country, but we can do something locally and make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick, for coming to present that information to us this evening, and we hope that with our zoning code rewrite and our other items that we put forth in planning and zoning that we can help to have smart growth as we are growing in this area. But thank you so much for coming to address council. Mr. Dreyer, do we have anybody else signed up in this area?
I believe, Mr. Medici, it's for the public hearing portion.
Are you here for the public
Yeah.
hearing?
Yeah,
Okay, just
we're
making
good.
sure. Thank you. Anyone else in the visitor section? Okay. Going into our reports, just want to thank everyone for, we had a very busy week last week with the Red Cross Blood Drive. Want to give a special thanks to Mr. Jameson's, Mr. Frank Reed, for council, who they donated on Wednesday, along with myself. So we had 3 members of the council to be good donors. And then also for staff, Ms. Renee Sonnet, Detective Greenbaum, and Mr. Ryan Huff, our public works supervisor. They were the staff members who stepped up to donate, and we had 38 good donations come from the blood drive. So, and a lot of our residents that donated asked if we would be hosting this again. So it was nice to have it locally, and just a good overall process to see how easy it is to step up and donate blood. Also, again, want to thank staff members for their efforts for the Veterans Day ceremony. I also attended the Plain City Elementary ceremony that morning on Friday, and they were able to have both Plain City Elementary students and Monroe Elementary all together for their program, which was exciting. I think that was the first time that has happened, so it was wonderful to see all the kids together.
Mayor,
Yes.
I just want to make note of the fact that everybody needs to know that the mayor was there giving blood also. And she confessed that that was her first time giving blood. And,
It was.
and it's obvious that she did survive it. So
Yes.
we're all happy about that.
Well, thank you, Mr. Reed. It was definitely, I was glad that that was successful and that I did not shy away from that opportunity. As we all told battle stories afterwards, I think I had it fairly easy. And then also coming up, we have this week, the coloring contest entries are due. So if you know any young children that would like to be considered for the tree lighting pixies for Christmas Under the Clock, make sure that they have their entries in by Wednesday. Another item that staff, that I was talking with Ms. Granger and Mr. Kitts about the tree lighting. And we do have some talent that is going to be performing, like the Starlight Twirlers, and I believe Shekinah Christian is going to be singing during that portion. I would like to institute some Christmas movie trivia, and I need council members' help with that. I was thinking that we could each donate a $10 gift card and get seven to 10 people from the crowd to come up and participate in that, but it would be kind of like our council give back for Christmas Under the Clock.
Absolutely.
Yes. Get more crowd interaction and participation. And also, I do believe DNA is going to be collecting toys in the clock tower building during that. We are also going to be a host drop-off for Santa for seniors. So if you either know of a senior who might like a small Christmas gift from the community or like to help participate in that, the municipal building will be a drop-off location. I know there's all sorts of different other community giving activities, such as the Socks for Carly. I know Hairlock 120 is a drop-off location. They're taking brand new socks there. I'm trying to think, there's the Plain City Presbyterian Christmas Basket Drive. So if you would like to adopt a family, I'm going to be posting about that in the coming weeks on my page. So with that, Finance Director and Ms. Sonnet.
Super quick, I reported earlier that our health insurance had a possible increase of like almost 6%. Ms. Left and I met with our agent and discussed some things. He went back to Medical Mutual, which is our carrier. They reduced our rate increase to 0.02. So.
I'm sorry, say that again.
it
From
reduced
5.6 to,
5.91 is what it was.
Yeah, okay.
0.02.
congratulations.
Exactly.
That's
So,
really good.
That's all I have here. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Sonnet. Chief McKee.
I think I'm just gonna wait till next council member, or meeting to report what I have to.
Okay, okay. Village Administrator, Ms. Lupton.
Thank you, Mayor. Village staff has been reviewing website RFPs for the website redesign. We should have that awarded by the end of the week. We received a draft repair plans for the Maple Street Bridge today. We're currently reviewing those and hope to get those repairs moving along. We did receive notice from ODOT that we received the grant. We will be awarded the funds for full replacement in 2025. I want to alert everyone that if you're registering as a vendor for any of our upcoming events, to please only interact with village staff. You can call us to confirm that. Beware of scammers trying to take your money. And lastly, I'd like to introduce Derek Hutchison. He's our new village planner. Many of you have already met him. He's here tonight. He's been very busy, and he'll be able to help with some of the EMV comments tonight. Thank you, that's all.
Thank you, Ms. Lupton. Council President, Mr. Terry.
So we have the work session on 12/7. I'm gonna miss it, so I'll work with Ms. Lupton on putting together the agenda. I'll send it this evening, but it's probably not worth moving because I'm out the next week too. So one of you guys can just step up.
All right, thank you, Mr. Terry. Our Law Director, Mr. Lafayette.
I'm in the process of reviewing a few contracts reviewing contracts for
camp spots for park fees, and drafting a few easements for the village for various projects. So, that's about all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Lafayette. Marketing and Communications, Mr. Sims.
We have a meeting tomorrow night at 6:30, so tune in or stop by. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
Thank you. BZA, Mr. Udio.
We had no meeting in October, and nothing in November that I know as yet. However, I did go to the Union County CIC, as representing the village, and they have, Union County is having a new comprehensive plan. They want to get a survey of the people. I gave some forms to the mayor that we'll put on the front desk that people can come and grab, and you can scan a QR code, takes you to the survey. We're neighbors to them. We should be good neighbors and help out with that comprehensive. Plus, it might help us as well to see what they're going to do and what they're planning to do in the future for Union County. There's some big growth that's going to be happening in the next few years coming from the CIC board.
Thank you, Mr. Udaly. Planning and zoning, we do not have a meeting for November, and we did not have an October meeting as well. But I know tonight is our big meeting for the zoning code rewrites. Parks and Recreation, Mr. Reed.
Thank you, Mayor. The Parks and Rec Committee met on November the 8th, which was last Wednesday. Finished up work on the capital budget the best we could. We couldn't fit all of the stuff in that 5-pound bag, but we got a lot of stuff in. We got the prioritized, we got the best stuff in, we think. So, there was a short discussion about in the future, at some point, maybe take up the subject of arts in the community, ARTS, as an event, activity, whatever. We have a theater group here, some music groups, and there's craft group, I think, going to be centered around the library. So the village maybe needs to pay a little bit of attention to what we can do to develop some arts culture in Plain City. That's a future. It's not a hot button. So the event schedule for Plain City includes on November 28th, the Lights in Pastime Park are going to go on. Again, this will be, I think, the 3rd year for having the Christmas lights. The plan was to start, to get it started 3 years ago. We did that, and then to gradually increase and grow and make it better and better. So we're looking for even better than last year at Pastime Park on Christmas. That's November 28th. That's also the day Santa puts his mailbox in Bicentennial Park. So if you're holding on to your letters, then just you'll have that opportunity to drop them in there. And then we get to Christmas Under the Clock, which is December the 3rd. And there's also a new event, to me anyway, the Holiday Hop. Mayor, do you know more about that than?
Yes, so from 9 to noon that morning, to give a little bit extra attention to the Route 42 corridor, residents and participants can go to all the different businesses. There will be a map out with all the different items. I do know that Ace Hardware, you can still go and visit Santa there, and they're going to have donuts. And I believe maybe Biscuit Boss is looking at being in the parking lot. I'm looking at Ms. Granger.
You may know more about that.
Okay, I talked to Mr. Kitts a little bit this morning. So there might be some food trucks along the way. ASC Feeds is going to be a stop, and they are raffling off a very nice Case IH pedal tractor. So you can go and get your chance to win that. We have to be cautious because there could be a hay auction that morning too, so there will be extra traffic along that area. I'm trying to think. Oh, Napa store, Plain City Napa, you can get the first 100 participants will get a free Napa hat. And I'm trying to think of the other stops that we have for the.
We still have people signing up, but I think quite a few businesses along the Route 42 corridor are going to be involved. Plain City Bowling will do free bowling from 9 to 10:30 a.m.
And then Plain City Druggist has Miller's Ice Cream at their stop. So that's yes.
And I believe right here in the village. Nope. Okay.
I think you're gonna do that uptown.
Okay. Nothing.
Nothing. There'll be. But yeah, so the holiday hop has been, as the village has taken over Christmas Under the Clock, it was going to be really hard to do transportation at nighttime along with, from the uptown to the 42 businesses. And a lot of our businesses along 42 are open during the daytime, so it really works for their schedule and just gives a little bit more holiday cheer throughout the day, spread out around the village versus just up in the uptown. So last year it was really well attended. I mean, I think there was a couple hundred people that came through, and I'm sure now there'll be even more.
That's all I have, Mayor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Reed. Personnel and Finance, Ms. Ferguson.
Our next meeting is November 30th at 6:30. And that's all I have to report. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Fire Board, Mr. Sims.
Thank you, Mayor. We met on 11/4, and October was a really busy month for fire education. They hosted schools coming out there, Monroe, and they also visited schools, not just Monroe, but several schools. There's the Plain City Fall Festival, the virtual firehouse tour. It was Fire Prevention Week, the week of October 9th through the 15th. And then, well, I guess that's not technically October, but there was also a tour that was given to these two fine gentlemen over here on, was it last week? Yeah, so, okay, that was not October, but they have the new engine 261 is in service because engine 262 is in the shop for brakes. They've got the next truck to get replaced is one of the medics, and it's a 2-year wait for trucks right now. And in the December meeting, we'll be talking about the 2023 budget planning.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Sims. And then I know Mr. Rucker is not here this evening, but Design Review Board, will you be meeting?
Yeah, it will be November
30th.
November 30th, okay.
Application.
Wonderful, thank you so much. Moving out of reports into our public hearing, an ordinance authorizing comprehensive amendments to the codified ordinance part 11, planning and zoning code and zoning map for the village of Plain City. I'd like to take this time and open the public hearing. So our first person, actually I'm gonna let Mr. Hutchison kind of get us caught up to speed where we're at.
Sure.
So I am coming into this process kind of, a year into it. So I have extensive background in code writing, especially in zoning. So I am doing a complete review. There are several items I have found that need to be tweaked, reworded, maybe added or deleted. So nothing that I could see that's going to push back we're not going to delay it much. If anything, for our January time frame that we're looking at. But there are going to be changes that I'm looking at, definitely in the commercial side of it, and definitely any comments. I'll go back and review any comments that we've had in the past hearings, and then I've had several business owners reach out in expressing concern that could potentially be included in these updates. So this is just a hearing tonight. We're not ready for first reading or anything like that. So changes still could be made and reviews ongoing right now.
When did you anticipate a first reading?
I would say best case early January.
So like the 9th or the 23rd council meeting?
Yeah.
And you anticipated having to go back to planning and zoning. Will the changes be substantial enough that it'll have to go back?
Yeah, I would feel more comfortable, just a new set of eyes. I will be meeting with OHM this week, and the chair, reached out to the chair of P&Z to just discuss kind of how we've got to where we are right now. But I am going to be recommending, so I'll definitely have a list of recommendations.
Perfect. So I guess for my law director, would that mean that we would have another set of public hearings, both at planning, zoning, and here? Or how does that work? Oh,
What's that? I'm sorry.
so if we,
Kids text.
no, it's fine. So basically, we're suggesting, I'm trying to understand the mechanics of this. So we're suggesting potential changes substantial enough to go back to planning and zoning. Will that really mean that we'll have to have another public hearing coming out of planning and zoning and another public hearing out of council?
That would, I mean, if we're making substantial changes like that, then yes. If it has to go back to planning and zoning for their approval of the changes, then yeah, I'd want to have a public hearing for that.
Yeah, so we're probably not really at a first reading in January, probably closer to like February.
Probably, because it has to go to P and Z first, and assuming P and Z, well, it depends how quickly they get them. If they get it this month, or if they get it mid-December, then they still have to give notices for their public hearings.
Yeah, in January would be best.
Yeah, I'm fine with, I'd rather have it done right than, do it wrong and have to amend it like a year from now. So, a couple of months is fine with that. But yeah, so I was just trying to figure out the timeline in our.
Sure. In zoning code, it's an evolving document. It's going to change. We're going to run into things that we find that may not work, for the village. Something like COVID changed everything. So if something else happened, it could very easily spark a lot more changes too. So I think as a whole, we've got a really good start. So in the things that I'm looking at, I'm going to call them minor, but there's multiple minors. So I'm hoping that just with conversation with planning and zoning, that we'll get some of that ironed out pretty quick. And hopefully it addresses a lot of concerns that some of our citizens have. So
Totally makes sense to me.
Thank you. I will entertain, I know, Mr. Medici, if you'd like to be the first up to speak.
I'm actually not sure. I just got a voicemail an hour ago that he reached out to me around lunchtime. I got off work and I found the voicemail, so I'm totally
Well, the nice thing is we're not voting until February, so
Fantastic.
even though we only gave you an hour notice tonight, we're giving you. So.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I was glad to hear that. I was at the previous meeting with the whole zoning group, and I think the single biggest question, I think, for everybody that was in the room, every business owner who was there that had questions all circling around the conditional use. And when I asked questions, I never really got an answer that I don't think my question was ever really answered. So I just wanted to make sure, after the meeting, I had several people who were there actually call me and say, they never answered your questions, did they? No, they didn't. So I wanted to make sure Mr. Lafayette was here so he can mull this over and think about it. The question of conditional usage. Does it follow the owner of the building, the tenant, or the sublet? And this becomes important because if the bank building on the corner has a current drive-through, I'm the owner of the building, I have a tenant who is going to be running that building, but if my tenant sublets the drive-through portion of that building to somebody and they decide not to use the drive-through for 12 months for some business reason, do I lose the conditional usage of that? Because is it the building owner, is it the tenant, or is it the sublet? And I never got an answer to that. You don't have to answer right now, but I want that to be something you think about.
I can throw it out to you. The use goes with the property.
Yeah.
So
Well, and that's what they said.
Yeah, and so the use is always gonna follow the property. Think of it almost like an easement, similar to an easement, that it always runs with the land. Doesn't matter who the owner is. So if the use, and I believe in our code, I'd have to look at it, but if there's gonna be a disruption in the use, there may be, I think there's a circumstance where you can petition to have it extended. I'm not 100% on it, I'd have to look at it. We haven't had that pop up, but I wanna say that I read something like that.
Okay, and they did, there were minor changes to that section between the last zoning meeting and when I just read this 20 minutes ago. But so it follows the building. So what you're saying is that if my tenant sublets that portion of the building to somebody who decides not to use the drive-through, I could potentially lose that drive-through.
Yes. Yeah, if that was a conditional lease that was put on the property, again, I'm not familiar
Well,
with
it's,
the property.
this zoning code has it listed as conditional, and actually when we arrived at the last zoning meeting, it was not allowed under any circumstances. So during the meeting, they changed it to conditional. So that's why I'm here. I just want everyone to think about that, because this is a massive undertaking and financial input from my perspective, what I'm doing to improve that section of the building, that whole, basically that whole quadrant of the property. And it revolves around that drive-through. That would change everything. So I don't know what you can, I guess if it always follows the use, do I have to require all tenants to open it for 10 days every year in order so that I don't lose my, I mean, that's what I just want you to think about.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point. And the only thing I can think of, and again, I started rattling around a little bit more, is you can get an extension on a conditional use when you are about to, on a variance or a use, if you're about to use the property for something, but you have to do certain development. And then during the process, there are delays where you're not going to be able to get to it within the 12 months. You can come back to the BZA and ask for an extension of that. I don't know if there's any specific provision for discontinuance or whether you'd have to come back and go through the process again. So it's something worth noting for the changes, and certainly something.
Is that
to look at as
an
well.
administrative process to get the extension? He just has to file some paperwork with the.
No, it has to go to the BZA, because it basically, by operation of our ordinance, it would be extinguished after non-use, and so you'd have to go back to the BZA and petition to have it opened up as a new conditional use or renewed.
Okay.
And that's the fear. If you have to reopen it up under a conditional use, it may not get approved.
Right.
And then all of the investment in time and effort and money would vanish. So that's.
If it fails at BZA, it could always just get it extended at BZA as well, obviously, and that's one of the criteria is like what was happening before, where it was, how much investment, if you knew about it, all those type of things. So I fully appreciate the concern. I also understand why we're saying it goes with the building, because we have to have some, we can't just have it go on forever if it's not being used. So I think it's something we can address, and I don't want to make a decision on this one exception to like set up a precedent that we're gonna have to drive throughs all throughout the thing. I think we all want that one, but we really don't want like others. I think it's the end goal.
Yeah, and I completely understand that. It just, everybody who was in that zoning meeting had questions revolving around that same thing. I mean, the veterinarian, that's now a conditional use. In fact, when we arrived there at the meeting, veterinarians were no longer allowed downtown, but you have an existing veterinarian. Yeah. And when you read the code under non-conforming uses, it says they can be continued only if. There's nothing listed under there saying, oh, your grandfather. There's nothing in that section saying, well, if you're already there, your grandfather. There's, so, and that conditional use, and their point was, if they, and they're getting older like all of us, if they ever tried to sell their business, well, if it's a conditional use on that building, someone could purchase that property, go to zoning, and they'd be like, no, we don't want that here anymore. So they lost their life's investment in that building. So that's why almost everyone in the audience there had concerns, and it was all surrounding conditional uses.
Yeah, well, let me clarify something then. Number one, it runs with the property. It's a part of the property. That use attaches to the property, not to a person, not to a tenant, anything like that. Attaches to the property. If there is a non-conforming use, so if zoning changes, for whatever reason zoning changes, it's not necessarily something that's definitively governed by our ordinance. It's governed by Ohio law. If there's a prior non-conforming use, that is a protected use.
Okay. And just some verbiage in here, I guess that was the thing, if there was some sort of verbiage to point you to look elsewhere.
Okay.
That just something, I think that was, I'm just bringing it up because that was the biggest concern, I think, of everybody in the audience that day.
Yeah, it's a constitutional issue at that point of the right to your prior non-conforming use. If all of a sudden we decide that, you know what, we don't want to have restaurants in the village anymore. We can't all of a sudden just declare that and everybody's going to close up. You
Right.
protect the property rights.
Okay, great. I have small things that I'll go over with him offline. The one major thing, and I think it would be considered a major rewrite, and I don't have all the answers. I have not researched everything, but it's regarding the historic district. From my discussions with the Ohio Historical Society, you can't have a certified local government, which means a historic district, unless you have that historic district defined. Now, I don't know if a zoning overlay counts. When you go through this zoning, all of this zoning, the historic district is never mentioned. There is no historic district in this document. It's just a zoning overlay to say we have a little bit different rules in this part of the uptown. There isn't a specific historic district. So somebody, hopefully not me, has to contact the Ohio Historical Society and just verify, will a zoning overlay work? That's the big question. Because if it won't, that whole section has to be rewritten. So
I thought we had a historic district defined.
it is
The design review board that I thought we had defined it years ago.
It's in the design review board standards.
But not in-
Yeah, it's not in.
Okay.
because
I was gonna
this,
say, I can remember sitting and we defined where it was at, but it's not in our zoning code.
right,
It's in, okay.
and this zoning code voids all previous zoning. So that document will disappear when this goes live. That's,
Well,
it is my understanding.
real quick on that, is that true that, I thought the design review board documents and that historic district would stay, or would that void out too? I thought just overlaid those chapters that were overlaid.
Yeah, I believe we're making changes to everything.
Okay, and that's there's a whole series of questions that follow that, about the guidelines that are being used and about the, I really didn't see anything in here explaining really anything about the historic district. I mean, no tie-ins in the glossary, top to bottom, it's almost like it was just not included in here. And my concern is one just for the development of the uptown in general and the historic district. If that goes away, none of the buildings will be eligible for state or federal grants. That takes it off the table. So you have to follow the certified local government and the Ohio Historical Society rules, and then you can apply for grants at the state or federal level. So it's my concern for all the other people working on buildings that be available. And for me, hopefully the only project I have left is the only building in Plain City that is on the National Register. So it doesn't affect me. I just want to make sure that going forward, anybody else who may want to apply for a grant or, because it can be up to 50% of the invested amount. You know, one's 35%, and it adds up to possibly 50% of restoring one of these buildings. So I just wanted to mention that you need to tread lightly and somebody contact my discussion with them, it was implied that had to be a specific district, not just an overlay. And I have a case where Union County told me that my 1875 building was not a historic building because it wasn't designated by somebody qualified to say so. And they killed my blueprint approval based upon that. So this isn't an academic thing. You need to follow the details. So thank you for.
Thank you, Mr. Mechie. Mr. Dryer, do we have any?
No, I don't know.
Anybody else? Here, oh, Ms. Doherty, if you'd like to take the podium.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't realize I had to make you aware.
No, what's your first and last name?
I'm Heather Doherty. I'm with the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. Thank you. So I'm with the Scenic River Program at ODNR. I appreciate the opportunity to give comments tonight. I've also recently had the pleasure of serving on the Zoning Code Advisory Committee, as well as getting to know a number of your city staff and Mayor Carney, as we've met several times to talk about these issues of how to allow the village to grow while also balancing the protection of Big Darby Creek, State and National Scenic River. So as many of you have heard, it's considered one of the best rivers in the state of Ohio. Certainly one of the most outstanding natural features in central Ohio. It provides habitat for rare and threatened endangered species. So it's a really important place. And I was really happy to see in the comprehensive plan that acknowledged and the stated goal of protecting the river. And the great thing is that a lot of the measures that will protect the health of the river and its wildlife will also protect it as a recreational resource, which is part of what makes Plain City a good place to live. And also helps address issues like flood risk, property damage that can come when you have lots of extra runoff from new development. So all of these things I think can really work together. So the plan identifies a number of strategies to achieve those goals. I think some of those are already in the revised code. And I think there's more opportunity though to really more fully realize those goals in the code. And so I'm submitting written comments here tonight. I won't read them all out to you, but I have discussed them already with some of your city staff. And they really fall into two general buckets. One of them is protect the natural features that you already have. So that includes wetlands, woodlots, river valleys themselves. Those natural features help absorb water. And that's really the goal. We want the water to be absorbed rather than become runoff that enters the river. And then where you will do build smart development that generates less runoff to begin with. So this is often referred to as low impact development. It's mentioned explicitly in your comprehensive plan. And it includes things, for instance, like considering how wide your streets are. Once you've shrank those hard surfaces that generate runoff, then when you do treat the runoff, do it with strategies that really get that water again back into the ground. And what you're trying to mimic is what would be happening without us. When it rains, the water goes through the soil into the ground. Very little of it actually leaves and enters waterways. So keeping that as close to that original condition as possible is what's going to help prevent a lot of damage to the river as all of central Ohio grows. So I've got a list of things that are related to that I'll submit here in writing. But I in particular wanted to draw attention to the Conservation Development Code, because that is really such an important tool for managing growth. And what it does is the comp plan calls for a lot of the residential growth that will happen outside of what's already planned, further away from the core of the village, to be conservation development. And what it does is it clusters homes onto smaller lots in the areas that are best suited for development. And then it allows the protection of larger swaths of green space, including sensitive features like poorly drained soils, like steep slopes, woodlots, wetlands, those types of places. A key element that makes it work is that it allows the same number of housing units under conservation subdivision as it would under the underlying zoning. So I think the way it's set up now is developers or other landowners will be allowed to bring forward proposals under a rural residential or suburban residential and apply those lot sizes or bring forward proposals as conservation subdivision. So they're allowed to opt in. So though the number of lots that you're allowed to have obviously will dictate whether people will opt into conservation subdivision. There's an example in the code right now. There's a graphic that's in my comments that I'll hand you that shows just that. It shows a development with 0.5 acre lots evenly spread out, and then a development on the same parcel with 1/4 acre lots, the footprint much smaller, 50% open space set aside. That was what was in your code as of 6 months ago. It's been revised and the lot sizes have gotten much larger. And I think I understand the desire to not crowd too much. Density can be overdone, but I think the problem with that though is that then you lose the number of units that you can build in that scenario. So if someone's looking at their 200 acres and saying, you know, under this scenario, I can build 100 houses, but in conservation subdivision, I'm only going to get 75, then I think no one's going to go for that option. And so my concern is that that tool will get passed over and won't get used. So my recommendation is to go back to the original strategy, which does make those lot sizes smaller. But I think so I understand that that's, you know, unpalatable to some, and I think it's just important to keep in mind what you get, which is 50% of the whole parcel green space. So some denser housing, but then lots of green space that then becomes usable as a recreational amenity. And then river protection. I mean, I think it's a really very powerful tool. So I think you'll have that to show for it. I think I'm going to leave you with that for right now, but I appreciate this opportunity. I hope we can continue this dialogue. I look forward to some additional meetings with staff. So, and I'm happy to be a resource. My information's on here. So I did not print, I can email a copy, but I also have some hard copies here that I can get you, and I'm sure I don't think it's enough for everybody here right now, but I'll pass these on.
So you're leaving a hard copy for us, okay.
Of the more extensive comments.
Yeah, I would
We can make
ask,
copies of that.
Mayor, that we scan those in and distribute those to council members at least.
That's what, Mr. Dryer will.
Now, I apologize I didn't get those to you in advance, but I can email you tomorrow too.
No problem.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Doherty. Is there anyone else who would like to speak at this moment on the zoning code rewrite? I will go ahead and close the public hearing. And then I am going to ask Mr. Lafayette, is this a good time where we can have the council members to talk a little bit or weigh in?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay, if anybody has
if
questions.
there's nobody else in the public that has any comments, sure.
For me, I think we're 95% of the way there, and I think we'll, with the team in place and everything, taking the comments, we'll get there. And I fully understand that this is a huge endeavor, so there's always going to be, we want to be careful that we don't have unintended consequences with changes, to Mr. Medici's points. So taking our time, I don't really have any specific comments on the code itself. I've read it, I've been in plenty of meetings on it. I'm excited to see the final draft, and I have full confidence that by the time we get to January, February, we'll have something that is probably going to make everyone a little happy and a little upset, and that's probably the right position to be in. So I look forward to it, but I don't think I have anything specific right now.
Mayor, I have a question about this public nuisance code.
That's not this public
Yeah,
document.
yeah,
Well, I
yeah.
understand that perfectly. I did not address you, Mr. Terry. And I was just curious because there is a section of the planning and zoning that deals with noise, and that's a subset of nuisances. Is this going to be a separate chapter from the planning and zoning code? And I'm not sure, I had not seen this before. I'm just curious where this is, because do we have a nuisance code in
Well,
our?
let me, let's wrap up. We're gonna wrap up the discussion
Right,
on
okay,
the,
fine.
part 11, and then I'll have Mr. Hutchison to, bring it and introduce the nuisance code portion. So
Thank
that, you're welcome. Any other comments from council members?
I think in regards to what we just talked about, that I think it's important that we make sure we address the historical district. We've done so much for the downtown area. I would hate to see us go backwards on that. We have some wonderful buildings that are down there, and if we miss something in the previous code that didn't have this in there, we need to make sure it's put in so we can protect not only the buildings, but the owners that are putting in the effort that's doing it and making our downtown the way it is. I mean, we're trying to make that a destination. Well, let's get our code wrapped up so we can get that to work right.
So then, if anybody doesn't have any other comments, Mr. Hutchinson, will we be having a planning and zoning meeting in December then? Is that what you're?
I would hope so, yeah. I would
Okay.
hope so, yeah.
Then do you have any questions for council at this moment for the zoning code?
No questions. Just, taking in from the citizen comments that we met with Heather last week. I had a great meeting. Got some great ideas from her, and so that'd be something we'll be looking at. And also just to the people that are here, Mr. Massetti, is that how you say it? Medici?
Anything close works.
Yeah. So drive-throughs is definitely on my list to look at, because as the code's proposed, it doesn't permit them anywhere. And that's not the intent, I think, of the code. So we will be looking at that. And as far as the DRB, the district, that's going to be, should be in the design review board, which will be in the building designs, which should be in the part, I think 13, which is the building department or building regs. That's pretty standard for those to always go, because it's more related to building than it is actual zoning. But that's where the district is, and that's where the guidelines and everything for any design for a district, historical district.
All right, thank you. Would you like to give an overview before we go into the public hearing on the codified ordinance of the Village of Plain City enacting Part 17 nuisance? Would you, before we go into it? Or Mr. Dryer, this is yours.
That's not a problem. So, when I first started in the zoning inspector position, one of the projects that I took on was looking over property maintenance code, trying to see what other municipalities were doing, see if we were lacking in any places or if we were, a little bit stronger in any places. Something I found very quickly is that nearly all municipalities, large or small, all that good stuff, use the International Property Maintenance Code that is provided by the ICC. And then different municipalities use different years. So did a lot of research. I would recommend that we look into adopting the 2021 version of the IPMMC. Obviously, there's going to be a little bit of language changes. There's certain things that proposed code would cover that are covered in that won't be done. I'm going to work with Mr. Lafayette to get kind of some of that verbiage and that language straightened out. This is very early in this stage to kind of look over this, and obviously this public hearing to get feedback. And then the public nuisance code is just going into a little bit more detail in terms of nuisance properties. And then steps to abate them and tools that the village can use to effectively and appropriately abate those problem properties. Again, just kind of trying to get feedback from council, residents, all that good stuff to see thoughts and all that.
All right.
Would this be, there's a section of our charter which allows us to adopt codes. This sounds like one of those things, that we would adopt the code. We could adopt it in whole without revision, just because it's a national standard or whatever. Is that what you have in mind for doing?
Yes, so what I envision is having a section within the code that says, the Village of Plain City hereby adopts, and then that document. But then again, where there's certain verbiage changes that would need change, the IPMMC actually has sections where they need us to write into the code the village of Plain City. So there would be some basic adoptions within that. And like I said, I can go into more detail later, but it would be adopting the document as a whole.
Right, okay, so what do you see as the time frame for, if we decide to do this, what would be the time for it to be done? Is this a next year project and we'll just take our sweet time about it, or?
No, ideally, I'd like to see this go through the zoning code, or as close to as possible.
On this round of zoning code you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. That sounds like it would maybe, since it's a building code, it might affect certain parts of the zoning code. And you're nodding yes, which you probably already know which sections it might. So it sounds like potentially extending the approval of the zoning code beyond what we now think it might be. Is that correct, or is it, because it sounds like more changes than just a little bit.
This will actually fall into the building department section. It will not be in a zone. It will not be in a zone.
Okay, so you don't see this as a major amount of work that, okay,
No,
thank you.
a lot of the work has been done for us by the ICC. That's one of the benefits of adopting this type, or I should say this document, is foundation's there. We need to make minor verbiage changes, potentially strike out a small section here or there, again, simple stuff that would, again, just be a better tool for the village.
Thank you, I just wanted to clarify that, thank you.
So just to say the quiet part out loud, so what he's asking is there ordinances that we have adopted now that will be subverted or overdone by this nuisance code? For example, the noise ordinance. That's the quiet part.
Yeah, I understand. So the nuisance code, the draft that is in the packet for tonight does not address noise ordinances specifically.
This is more for if, like mowing junk
Yeah,
cars,
junk cars.
yeah.
Property maintenance.
That type of
Property,
nuisance.
yes.
That type of nuisance.
Alright. So I'd like to open the public hearing for an ordinance to amend the codified ordinance of the Village of Plain City, Ohio, enacting Part 17 Nuisance and Property Maintenance Code, Title 1 Public Nuisances, and Title 3 Property Maintenance Code. Is anyone here to speak upon this public hearing?
Mayor, is this public nuisance code draft what we're having a public hearing over? Is this is the intended new part of the code? Okay, we just haven't assigned a chapter to it yet. All right, thank you.
Without anyone coming forward to speak, I will close the public hearing. And does any council member have any further questions for Mr. Dreyer at this time? Okay. Moving out of the public hearing portion into the old business. Second reading ordinance 23-2022, an ordinance amending sections 1327.10 and 1327.11 of the codified ordinances. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve ordinance 23-2022.
Mayor,
Oh, I'm sorry, I got a motion and a second by Mr. Sens. Yes, Mr. Reed.
I'll be voting no on this ordinance, not because of most of it, but because of the last sentence in it, which confines, or which constricts and confines council to specific behaviors and specific procedures for conducting hearings on DRB appeals. I think the council would be wise not to do that. I don't think it serves council's purpose, and I don't think it serves the purpose of the public to constrain council. All right, we'll just let it go at that. So I'll be voting no on this.
Is there any other further discussion? Mr. Dryer, if you would take the roll.
Mr. Terry?
Yes.
Mr. Daly?
Yes.
Ms. Ferguson?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
No.
Mr. Sins?
Yes.
Second reading ordinance 24-2022, an ordinance approving the vacation of a public alley within the village of Plain City running between Main Street and Bigelow Avenue.
Motion to approve ordinance 24-2022.
Second?
Mr. Terry?
Yes.
Mr. Daly?
Yes.
Ms. Ferguson?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Mr. Sins?
Yes.
And second reading ordinance 25-2022, an ordinance establishing and entering into a community monument easement and maintenance agreement for the clock tower property at 101 South Chillicothe Street.
Motion to approve ordinance 25-2022.
Second.
Mr. Terry?
Yes.
Mr. Daly?
Yes.
Ms. Ferguson?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Mr. Sins?
Yes.
Moving out of old business into new business, first reading ordinance 26-2022, an ordinance amending water and sewer rates for the village of Plain City, Ohio, beginning March 1st, 2023. First reading ordinance 27-2022, an ordinance authorizing the village administrator to award the contract for the village of Plain City Uptown Streetscape Project to Danbert Incorporated and declaring an emergency and requesting a waiver of the second reading.
Motion to waive second reading ordinance 27-2022.
I'll second that.
Mr. Terry?
Yes.
Mr. Daly?
Yes.
Ms. Ferguson?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
No.
Mr. Sins?
Yes.
I believe that failed.
Can I ask why?
Oh, sure, you can. And I was about to get to that on the second reading. But this ordinance, as it's put forward, incorporates the whole bushel basket full of work on the streetscapes. And the thing I said at last meeting was that the streetscapes, when it was initially designed, the project was done in segments. The basic segments I'm fine with doing this year, and I would like to see the segments done in the original order that they were planned. Plus it uses ARPA funds to pay for part of it. The ARPA funds have at least a dozen or more possible uses. ARPA funds were not planned to be used for this kind of a project. We have a lot of things we can do with ARPA funds to benefit the village, and we're kind of bypassing those. We brought up last meeting, we brought up pedestrian walkways, bike trails, safety issues that we can address in the village. If we do use the ARPA funds, those funds are gone and we won't be able to use them for those purposes. We haven't paid any attention to one of the primary purposes of ARPA funds, is to create a social safety net for residents, the electorate, if you will, who are affected by the COVID virus. I know that's not something the village has paid a lot of attention to in the past, but I think, and when we first got the ARPA funds, I said, you know, we have to be smart about the way we use these funds, because there's money available for purposes that we're probably never going to do the things that we can do with ARPA funds otherwise, because we just won't take it out of income tax dollars. So, and there's a few other reasons, but there's serious reasons why we should just go back to the original plan for streetscapes, do those things, and look for other ways to make improvements in our community using those funds. And there are important things that could be done and useful things that would mean a lot to the village.
Mr. Reed, I respect totally what you're saying. I believe we've talked at length, and just to clarify, this is with the 4 votes going to pass in 2 weeks. So this is really just a delay tactic. So while I understand your disagreement with it, all you're doing is delaying the progress of us being able to move forward on this, because it clearly went 4-1. I understand that that's within your right, and we need a supermajority to pass, so I'm not saying that I'm asking for anything else. But frankly speaking, the rest of the council has spoke about this at a bunch. We've talked about different ways to use this money, and we came to this conclusion. So it is what it is. I would ask that, when you do this, just know that all you're really doing is setting this village back another 2 weeks. That's all that's happening. Because in 2 weeks we will pass this.
Well, first of all, I don't think I'm setting the village back 2 weeks.
Yeah, you are. This project will be.
We'll talk about it again, we'll bring it up
Delay
again,
for
and we
2
will
weeks.
delay,
It's
we'll
gonna
waste
pass.
everyone's time again.
So why don't you just tell me how you feel, Mr. Cherry?
I think I got it pretty clearly.
Well, let me open the question up to the other two council members. I know how you feel. I know how Mr. Cherry feels. Is there any possibility that the other two council members over here would want to consider using ARPA funds for some other purpose besides streetscapes to benefit the community?
I believe at the last meeting when we spoke about this, I know I voiced my opinion that the village needs to support the uptown businesses, building owners, not businesses, building owners who have put money into their buildings, that it's time that we do a good faith effort to support their efforts so that our village can look great for the community. I mean, it is not just for building owners, it's for the residents. And everybody wins when we make our downtown vibrant and look fantastic like the plans show.
And it's gonna be safer too. Look at the sidewalks we got right now that are there.
Very much.
That's my point.
Mr. Sense, do you have an opinion?
Yes, we're also adding, part of the streetscape is to make it safer, is to make the sidewalks safer. It's a good use of those funds. We're also extending, I believe, water line across, which makes those buildings safer. So I think it's a good use of those funds.
Okay, having heard that, Mr. Cherry, I believe what you say, that it's inevitable that's gonna happen. I haven't been able to convince a single person that there's other and more important uses than to extend or enlarge the streetscapes project for this year. So I will make a motion to reconsider the previous vote.
Thank you. Second?
Mr. Cherry?
Yes.
Excuse me, Mr. Daly?
Yes.
Ms. Ferguson?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Mr. Sens?
Yes.
Now that was a vote on the motion to reconsider.
Correct. So I will re-motion to waive a second reading on ordinance 27, 2022.
Second.
Mr. Cherry?
Yes.
Mr. Daly?
Yes.
Ms. Ferguson?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Mr. Sens?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Motion to approve ordinance 27, 2022
Thank you.
and declare emergency.
Second.
Mr. Cherry?
Yes.
Mr. Daly?
Yes.
Ms. Ferguson?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Mr. Sens?
Yes.
First reading, resolution 22-2022, a resolution for final appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the village through December 31st, 2023.
So I have a real quick question. So it's not December 31st, 2023, right?
It's the expenses through the end of next year, yes.
Okay. So this is basically the budget.
Yes,
For 2023.
the first reading.
I have a question about one small item in the budget that could get taken care of, and we can do it before the second reading, and that is, there was an item in the general fund on community support. It seems to have gone to zero. And I still have an opportunity to explain why you chose to do that and see if we can maybe get some amount of funds. It was $20,000 for that, which I thought was maybe a little more than we needed. So if we can get something in there, because those funds pay for Rock the Clock support.
That was moved to try to reduce the amount of line items. It was moved to contributions to community events, which has its own account number.
Okay, so you just basically changed the name.
Yeah, and it has its own account.
Okay, fine, thank you.
You're welcome. I won't go through the whole presentation from last week, but just a couple of quick notes. I sent the memo this morning. The compensation study number was updated. That math, I had double done the math. Renee corrected me. The Maple Street Bridge, because we hope to be able to do it this year, I changed that to West Avenue Engineering in the budget. And then I updated the park projects to reflect the CIP planning that the committee came up with this week.
So I guess my concern on both this and then the next reading is we're gonna do a second reading at the next meeting and vote. So we haven't really had an opportunity to debate the compensation study. So may I suggest that we put like either a discussion item or something where we can kind of go over the compensation study ahead of a vote. I'm not trying to delay the budget, except I'm just saying I don't feel like we've had a healthy conversation about it. I know it has at Personnel Finance, but I don't know if we've had one here. I feel like I still need kind of a overview and walkthrough of it beyond just a memo. So if we could maybe put that as like a discussion item or old business or something.
Sure.
Because I know once we get into these, it's tough to have a conversation when we're voting. And I think, I don't know how the other members of council feel, but I would like to have kind of a explanation from you and Ms. Sonnet about it a little bit more at some point.
Could we, after I read the first reading for it, could we then discuss it at that
Yeah, or we
time?
can have something more prepared next time, and we could go through it individually, or.
Yeah, I don't know how you guys feel.
Or give it to us the week before so we can review.
Yeah, it's in here. I mean, I read it. It's in here. It's kind of hard to, without knowing, a little bit from you guys. And then, did we need to do I think we talked about at some point doing like a supplemental budget for the current year, basically the overs and unders on revenues and expenses.
That will be on the agenda for the November 30th PNF. So we'll kind of clean up our items. There's a couple of things that need adjusted, and then those balances will be reflected in this budget.
Okay, sorry to get into this a little bit here, but so then our ending balances that we're building the budget off of, that we're going to vote on in 2 weeks will change?
Not significant. I've been trying to, do my best guess.
No, it's tough, right? It's chicken or egg, right? Like, I don't wanna wait, like,
I
till
know
this
what's
everything.
encumbered, I know what's gonna be spent, I know those kind of things, and I'm working with all the department heads about what their intentions are with the outstanding POs and things like that, and that's where we're, outside an emergency would come up, these are our best guess.
And that's reflected in this budget.
Yeah.
So again, for me, ahead of voting on this next week or 2 weeks from now, maybe a quick here's what we thought we were gonna have a revenue, here's what we did. Here's what we thought we were gonna expend, here's what we did. Here's the compensation study. I wanna make sure that we're not rushing to approve the budget. I also don't wanna delay it, but there are pieces of this that I feel like we're gonna be doing supplemental budgets after we accept the budget. So if we could kind of understand what we think that's gonna be, and then the impact of the comp study, and then I think we'll be in a better position to vote on the actual budget and compensation study all at once.
Yeah, it's kind of an odd duck,
Yeah.
Mr. Cherry, because you can't spend any money in 2023 until you appropriate it, which means you have to have a budget.
Yep.
You don't know what the starting numbers are until after the end of the year. So you go back and you correct those numbers after the end of the year, which is perfectly legal to do. We can do our supplemental after the end of the year to adjust the budget, make it line up the way it's supposed to. If we happen to accidentally overspend in some fund for the year, we could correct that after the end of the year and get the appropriations right for that. So, yeah, I think we got a good handle on it, right?
First reading, Resolution 23-2022, a resolution accepting determinations of compensation plan update. first reading resolution 24-2022, a resolution amending the Village of Plain City Citizen Recognition Policy and Award Application.
Looks good.
We have no discussion items, no executive session. And is there any other questions on the citizen recognition? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So a motion to adjourn?
Second?
Second.
Thanks, everyone.